So yeah, let's start. I think we have most of the visitors already in. So let me introduce myself. First of all, my name is Nicolás Vergara, and I am the head of Santander Universities here in Brazil. And I will have the pleasure to be the moderator of this webinar. So before I start, I'd like to inform you that we have simultaneous translation to Spanish and Portuguese available for this webinar. You can activate by clicking in the globe icon at the bottom of your screens. So, ustedes pueden activar la introducción en español en el icono del globo, la parte inferior de sus pantallas de Zoom. Ou em português, vocês podem ativar a interpretação em português no ícone do globo na parte inferior das telas. So, I'd like to welcome the rectors who are joining us for this preparatory webinar for the 5th Universia International Rectors Summit. As you all know, will take place on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of May 2023 in the city of Valencia in Spain. So the theme will be University and Society. On the event's website, which will be shared with you via the chat, you will find more information about the event, as well as news and information about the webinars. Probably someone will share with you in the chat. So this is the third webinar in a series of 4. The first 2 webinars dealt with 2 of the summit themes, supporting lifelong learning and boosting entrepreneurship and innovation. The last webinar, scheduled for 12 April 2023, will focus on the relationship between the university and society. For today's webinar, we will focus on the main challenges and opportunities that universities face when collaborating with other universities and other actors of the society, such as industries, governments, and the society as a whole. We will start by a short presentation of a leader of university cooperation, Arno Meerman, followed by a panel with 3 rectors from the UK, United States, and Germany, who will be individually introduced later. These preparatory events are critical to start the conversation that we will continue that in Valencia, opening the floor to more participants and generating inputs for the Valencia Declaration, which is a common document that we will present, that will be presented at the end of the event in Valencia. So before we start this webinar, I would like to ask the President of Santander Universities and Vice President of Universia, Mr. Matias Rodriguez Inciarte, to give us a short welcome message. Matias, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicolás. It's for me a pleasure to attend this webinar and to welcome everybody on behalf of Banco Santander, panelists, rectors, presidents of universities, participants. Welcome everybody to this very interesting initiative of creating these webinars to prepare for our Rectors Universities Summit that would take place in Valencia in a couple of months. Well, in the last summit, Rector Summit that took place in Salamanca in year 2018, one of the initiatives that was decided at this event was to promote through Universia a program that was called MetaRed IT, in order to create a network of universities cooperating in areas of such importance as digital transition, training action, protecting against cybersecurity threats, and other initiatives that assembled a number of 1,400 universities cooperating in this network. Lately, as a result of the success of this initiative, we developed another program starting in 2021. It was MetaRed X that promoted the entrepreneurship initiatives. And in this case, 700 universities were associated with this program. It was another example of how we could promote the cooperation of universities in this kind of networks. More recently, also as a development through Universia, we created a program to promote cooperation in the university's social responsibility activities. And in June 2021, MetaRed ESG was formally presented, and it already operates in 8 countries. I set these 3 examples of cooperation among universities because we think there are 3 good examples of how we can develop in the future closer cooperation among universities, which is one of the main purposes of these Universia initiatives. And I am sure that these themes will be developed in our summit in Valencia. But once again, I think this webinar that is now starting is a good opportunity to share ideas, to promote initiatives, and to promote this closer cooperation among universities, which is key for our future. So once again, thank you to all the participants for accepting to cooperate in this webinar, and I look forward to the debate that is going to take place subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words, Matias, for your commitment and that of Banco Santander to promote collaboration between universities and with other actors of the ecosystem. As a member of Santander University's team for the last 3 years and acting here in Brazil, I can give my personal testimony about the impact of our initiatives in the ecosystem and all these connections that Matias has already just mentioned. So moving to our next invited, I'd like to remind you that, or before going to the next participation, I'd like to remind you all that you can send your questions to our panelists through the Q&A space at the bottom of the menu as well, next to the chat icon. So please don't use the chat to send the questions. Please use the Q&A space, then our team can check it better. So thank you. And without further delay, I introduce you Arno Meerman, founder and CEO of UIIN, which is the University Industry Innovation Network, a leading global evidence-driven consultancy, training, and community provider in university industry engagement. Arno has been involved in research on the role of universities in our society and the opportunities external engagement provides to enhancing the impact of education and research. He's an active researcher, facilitator, and consultant, and works with university industry innovation networks of more than 120 university members to train and consult university leaders and professional staff to develop more entrepreneurial universities, a strategic approach towards partnering and enhance that impact. So Arno, thank you very much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Nicholas, and thank you all those in attendance. It's great to speak for such an audience here today and to talk about one of my favorite topics, universities and external engagement. I just wanted to start with the African proverb of if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I think that you will see that throughout my presentation, that is something that UIN really stands for and lives by. We believe the future lies in the hands of universities and contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals and other activities, and really enhancing the impact of their research can be done through collaboration and engagement. As already introduced, my name is Arno Meerman. You have my email address on the slide if you'd like to get in touch after today's session. And as Nicholas mentioned, drop your questions in the Q&A for the rest of today's webinar. I wanted to start with just one definition. We sometimes forget where the word university comes from, and we have both the Latin version of it, but then maybe a not so literal translation of it, but nonetheless an attempt to translate what university stands for. And I just wanted to highlight the word community of teachers and scholars. That's how university started, before evolving into the entities that they are today, which is focusing on its key 3 missions: education, as I said, In the 11th century, we had the University of Bologna as the first university of its kind, starting out that way. But over time, we've seen multiple models evolve towards the Humboldt model of a university, the Oxford and Cambridge model, the Paris model of a university, focusing on the second mission of these institutions, research. And then later on, we have added a mission to it, which we often refer to as technology transfer. I'd like to step away from that term a little bit, because for me, universities are so much more than just these three types of activities. First of all, transfer is a linear process, more so than a collaborative process. It's involving the external parties or other entities far too late at the end of the process, rather than right at the start when it comes to collaborative research, creating new models of education and research. To me, universities are institutions that provide education to people of all ages, not just between the ages of 18 to 24. They're also conducting research, still sometimes in isolation, but also in collaboration and sometimes in contract of other entities. That can be a business partner, but can be, coming back to the point of the community, can just as well be a local and regional community. It can be our municipality, it can be our national governments or other research entities. And in the end, the ultimate goal is not to provide education and research, it's to ensure employability, economic and social growth, and enhance our knowledge society as a whole. Those are some of the things that we should be doing as a university. And just coming back to the opening line, you can't do that together. You can do it alone and go fast, but you won't get that far. If we want to get far as universities, we need to do that in collaborations, in networks, in communities. That can be Europe, for example, through European university alliances as a university community, but maybe far more importantly is to be wholly inclusive and include any other type of entity as part of that. I just wanted to run with you through a few insights that we've derived from an initiative that we at UIN, in collaboration with a few other partners, have undertaken with the involvement of contributors from across the globe. It's the Future Universities Thought Book Initiative. And I just wanted to maybe highlight some of the roles that we've seen as part of that when we talk about the future and the future of universities. The first role I just wanted to touch on is the talent engine, which is about developing and validating students' competencies, skills, and knowledge. We really see a role there for the university in terms of talent engine. You might say, oh, isn't that what they're already doing? Maybe so, but far too much in isolation. We're not letting external stakeholders inform or influence to a certain extent our curriculum. We're not always educating the students in such a way that they're immediately employable or are becoming employers themselves. We can do far better when it comes to that and provide education in different forms and shapes in collaboration with other entities around us. It's the life partner, continuously adding or scaling the skills of professionals. It's really about that lifelong learning approach. We no longer have students entering a university at the age of 18 or 17, 18, 19 and exiting around about before they're the age of 30. No, students will always be a part of our institution. It's like your gym membership, if you have one. You continuously revisit that same place. You come back to upskill and reskill yourself, move into other areas and get access to new, develop new soft skills, but also develop new knowledge and competencies. It's the discovery role, maybe more aligned to some of our research-intensive organizations as we already know them. It's about cutting-edge, visionary, but also collaborative research, doing that together with our external stakeholders. Then the home base, an open co-working exchange space for the region. We really see this as an institution that's connected to all entities surrounding the university, fulfilling a role as a problem solver for small and medium-sized enterprises, providing that telescope or innovation pipeline when it comes to maybe the larger corporates who can turn to universities to really do that deep exploration that we need to do in order to drive innovation forward. It's the university is that place where anyone in our community, in our region can go to, as the word implies, a home base. And then maybe the last role that we see for a university going forward is a launchpad, an entrepreneurial base for students, academics, and business, hosting academic spin-offs, as we see at science parks or technology parks often surrounding a university, providing a place for student and business incubation and acceleration and providing that pathway, that entrepreneurial pathway out of the university. And then also for business, to maybe benefit from the research facilities that are situated at a university that are, as statistics have shown, far too often not utilized to the fullest extent. We have far too much unutilized research infrastructure sitting there that our startups and early growth ventures can really benefit from. One thing I just want to highlight again, none of these roles are just a university, right? This is a role that we see the university can fulfill, but only in collaboration with and engaging with external actors. Also, just wanted to share a few results of a large quantitative study that we've undertaken in collaboration with, amongst others, the Science to Business Marketing Research Center in Germany, around motivators, facilitators, and barriers. And just a few quick insights from over 17,000 respondents. Because, as I said, we need to do all these things through engagement and through collaboration with others. But how do we motivate them, or what actually motivates us? When we look at that from the perspective of, on the vertical axis, you would have universities, academics, and business from left to right. And if we look at what their motivations are, then one thing they have in common, you might say, oh, they're all different, right? So they want new discovery and innovation for business, whereas academics want research insight and research into society. But in the end, what they all focus on is talent, the education of talent, employability, and research and driving forward innovation. And in order to ensure the impact of our research, we need to move beyond publications and into real impact, and not just measure the outputs of our activities, but the impact of our activities. What have we created through our engagement activities? What facilitates engagement? In one word, relationships. It's about mutual trust, shared goals, and commitment. That's what we need to achieve. We need to build and establish those relationships. I'll touch upon that in just a minute. And then the last one, in terms of the barriers that we have, that we face when engaging, generally we see we have a lack of resources, when it comes to undertaking these activities, funding, time, and then the latter is also around culture. We still have a very bureaucratic culture within universities, and the culture between universities and industry, for example, as an external entity, they don't always align. But I don't want to focus too much on problems. I just wanted to close off my talk with just 2 more slides, and just to focus on a few things that we can do in order to work towards those 5 roles of universities, not necessarily being mutually exclusive, and to overcome some of those barriers and activate those motivators and facilitators I've shown you just before. Some insights that we have derived from our community of over 120 universities and 20 large corporates that are part of UIN and that are committed towards becoming more engaged with each other and their external environment. Some insight from that is, when we look to develop new relationships, it's about starting on common ground, be transparent on our goals and interests. Right from the start, talk about what you're looking to get out of this and have those conversations. Don't approach a partner because there's a grant opportunity from the European Commission or another entity and go like, oh, we need a business partner, so can you come on board? Now have a conversation earlier on. What are you looking to get out of this relationship? Be clear on what you want to achieve, and take the time to understand the other party's objective. It's like building any relationship. If that is with your own life partner at home, or if that is with another business partner or with anyone else, we really need to have those conversations and understand, what are we looking to get out of this, and agree on those things as well, and invest time into exploring and finding shared opportunities to work on. In the end, it's all about the mutual benefit that we can create out of this. We're not opposing entities. Just because we're different types of entities and we're not all universities or not all research organizations, doesn't necessarily mean that we need to work into competition. It's far more about collaboration that will serve us very well when it comes to the impact that we're looking to create through employability, economic growth, and enhancing our knowledge society. And maybe just lastly, about how to actually create more meaningful external relationships, I just want to leave you with 4 points. The first one, it's identifying the type of support needed and set up the relevant support structures. If you are a university leader, you do have the power to put into place certain mechanisms that enable and unlock the potential within your university. Far too often, we blame our academics for not undertaking engagement, but are you actually providing them with the amount of time that they need, with the financial and other mechanisms, that can allow them to undertake external engagement activities? Or are you making them forcing them to focus far too much on education and research activities and conducting that in isolation? Are you still measuring your academics through the amount of papers that they publish, for example? Or have you also started to include maybe external grant opportunities, the funding that they acquire, or if they have started a spin-off, or if they've undertaken any mobility activities with other entities? Then up next is starting small. It's about exploring potential ways of working together. It's taking those initial steps. Don't look for that 10 million euro, dollar, other kind of currency that you want opportunity. It's about maybe inviting some external stakeholders into your education programs and bringing them in that way without necessarily immediately asking them to put money on the table. It's about reducing those administrative barriers. Don't ask someone to fill in 3 or 4 or 5 forms just to take a quick trip to a business partner when they want to book a flight to go to the conference in May, for example. Make it easy for them to attend events, to engage with other stakeholders, and make the process smooth for external partners to engage with your organization. But mostly, and maybe the most important element, is about building an internal culture that recognizes and values engagement. If you want to become a more engaged entrepreneurial or innovative institution, you need to create and foster that culture. Changing a culture takes time and effort and commitment, and it requires that top level, that leadership and taking charge kind of approach of you as university leaders to actually make that happen. I hope with over the last 10 minutes to have inspired you in terms of maybe the roles for the future going forward, the future university, and potential ways of engagement, and how you can take those first steps. But of course, if you'd like to stay in touch, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me at mirman@uin.org or visit our website at uin.org. I'm always happy to have conversations around how we can facilitate your first steps towards becoming a more entrepreneurial and engaged institution. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Arno. This is a subject that we can talk much more than 10 minutes, definitely. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think you have given us many insights on how universities can overcome the main challenge they face when collaborating with other actors and the power of these collaborations, doing so much more than it was expected from them in the past. So it was definitely a very good reflection of how we can create these relationships and achieve this collaboration. So after this initial inspiring presentation, we will proceed to the Rectors panel. But before that, we'd like to ask our audience a question about the main barriers to university industry cooperation you face. So it should be popping up on your screen right now, a question. You're going to have 1 minute to respond. And in the meantime, in the benefit of the time, we will continue with the panel. So on behalf of the academic committee of the Rectors Summit, I would like to thank the rectors for agreeing to participate in this preparatory event. Your presence here is very much appreciated for us. For the dynamics of the sessions, each of the rectors will have a few minutes to briefly answer the questions, and afterward, we will open the floor to take more questions from the audience, again, in the bottom of Q&A that I have mentioned before. I begin the session by welcoming Professor Dame Sally Mapstone, Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of St. Andrews. Professor Mapstone has extensive experience in higher education. Dame Sally's other roles include Convener of Universities Scotland, a member of the Board of Universities UK, Chair of the Higher Education Policy Institute Board of Trustees, Vice Chair of the Carnegie Trust for the Universities of Scotland, and a trustee of UCAS and of the European. Before St. Andrews, Dame Sally was Pro-Vice Chancellor for Education at the University of Oxford. Professor Mapstone, more and more often, universities are creating new frameworks for international cooperation. Looking at the future, how do you think universities can innovate in their internalization processes and what should be their priorities in order to contribute to sustainable development?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Nicholas. Hello, everybody. Really pleased to be with you and to be part of this afternoon's deliberations. So I suppose that international networks and frameworks can take many forms. Some of them orient around research and innovation and entrepreneurship, as we've just been hearing so wonderfully from Arno. Some of them orient around students, some orient around social responsibility, and some major on regions or geographical orientation. And of course, many universities participate variously in a range of networks. I'm going to start first by briefly talking about international student recruitment, because international student recruitment trends are changing. The United Kingdom, for example, exceeded its 600,000 international student goal several years ago. So universities are going to increasingly become selecting rather than just recruiting. And internationalization strategies in countries such as the UK will therefore need to evolve to compete for the very best students and not just numbers of students. And there is far more competition now for attracting international students than from the traditional big four recruiting countries, Australia, Canada, the UK, and the US. The quality of universities around the world really continues to improve. And we're also seeing more in-region competition where students are choosing high-quality universities closer to home. So universities with innovative internationalization processes will therefore prioritize, I think, a model of partnership amongst equals, working with other universities abroad. And to remain competitive, universities are going to need to examine what they can bring to the table that makes for a compelling student experience. And that is particularly important for the United Kingdom, which is becoming ever more expensive for international students. The value proposition of a UK education has to evolve if we're going to remain attractive. Now, the research dimension to internationalization is equally important. Big issues such as climate change, sustainability, and poverty alleviation will only be addressed by the best minds collaborating and working together, as again, we just heard from Arno. Digital can certainly help with that, particularly in terms of environmental sustainability, but it is not a replacement for in-person interaction. Program delivery will continue to evolve, I think, both in terms of the vehicles for delivering programs, as well as types of program that meet evolving needs, including, of course, shorter modular programs and lifelong learning. So I think transnational education will therefore take on a range of different forms, such as partnership, collaboration, fly-in, fly-out, digital and in-country campuses. And to support all this, we could see hubs and smart cities emerge in different regions that bring greater interdisciplinarity and choice in single spots that are more accessible to prospective students. And one interesting example of this is in India with their gift city in Gujarat. Those kind of hubs also have the potential to impact economic recovery and development by incorporating local providers and SMEs, providing the right ecosystem to accelerate progress. So just to round up, I would say that universities need to decide in terms of their mission which elements of internationalization they now wish to prioritize, and they need to get both more smart and more flexible about how they construct that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mapstone, for your words. I think you had a very important point about the transnational education, and especially how the universities can use all the available tools and ways, not only to recruit, but also to teach and to collaborate with these students. And here in Brazil, we have a very good example. We are far from these countries that you mentioned, Australia, UK, Canada, and the US. So I think for us, these new tools and ways are very important to bring to our students and to our society knowledge and quality in the education. So that's a very important point. So thank you very much again. Before presenting our next panelist, we would like to ask our audience a second question. So as in the first one, you're going to have a question popping up on your screen. This is about their main cooperation strategies. Once again, we're going to give you 1 minute to answer the question. But again, in the meantime, we will continue with the panel in order to use our time. So now I have the honor to present Professor Marisa Kelly, President of Suffolk University in the United States. Dr. Kelly, whose academic discipline is political science, has a distinguished record of collaborative academic leadership. Before joining Suffolk, she served as provost at Ithaca College, Dean and McQueen Distinguished Chair of the College of Arts and Sciences of the University of St. Thomas, Minnesota, and spent 12 years as a faculty member and administrator at University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. She serves on a number of higher education and nonprofit boards, including as board chair of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Massachusetts, the executive board of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, and the Boston Debate League. Doctor, welcome again. Universities are increasingly aware of the role they play in their environments and the power of collaboration. Many universities have implemented strategies and programs to collaborate with other actors for the benefit of sustainable development. In this regard, what do you consider to be the main challenge and opportunities that universities face when collaborating with both governments and society?
Thank you, and very happy to be here with all of you. I think this is such an important set of topics, really. No, I think the greatest benefit and barrier to collaboration with other entities, with the public sector, government entities, and even non-governmental organizations, certainly within the United States anyway, that both the greatest challenge and the greatest benefit are two sides of the same coin, if you will, and that is the having the relationships and the structures in place in advance to allow for collaboration on an ongoing basis as opportunities present themselves, either because of situations we face in society, commonly face, or innovation that comes up from one side or the other. And I think actually Arno was touching on this. It's a very important point. Without existing networks and relationships to move forward when the opportunity presents itself, it is very challenging to be able to act quickly enough or to have the trust necessary to move forward in a positive way. And I'll give you an example that really comes right out of the darkest months, if you will, of COVID. You mentioned I am the board chair of the Associated Colleges and Universities of Massachusetts, and there are about 60 private institutions that are part of that organization. Because we had that network built and met routinely, just on a quarterly basis, when COVID really forced a shutdown of the higher education sector in the state of Massachusetts, as happened, of course, all over the globe in many, for the most part, we were in a position to work collaboratively with the state of Massachusetts as the higher education sector, with the state of Massachusetts, with private labs in the development of and distribution of the COVID vaccines that ultimately had an impact on the ability of the entire world to move past this. Higher education collaborated in our region to a degree very quickly and early on in comparison to other parts of the United States, because we had that structure in place already. It had allowed us to build a trust not only amongst colleges and universities peer-to-peer, but also with the public sector. That was critical to our ability to reopen by the fall of 2020, having students on our campuses in person, living in our residence halls, and doing so safely. And again, it was because of that existing relationship. So I use that really just as one example of the importance of networking, which, is a common refrain, right? We always talk about networks. We tell our students networking is important, but really the ongoing networks that allow for us as colleges and universities to take advantage of opportunities when we need to. And I think that's probably the single most important point with respect to ongoing collaboration, and certainly with that's true across the sort of university and public sector, government sector division, if you will.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kelly. You mentioned two things that I think are key in this process, which are creating trust, so the trust between the actors, and also how this helps us to be quick when you have or when you face a problem. So you mentioned the COVID example, which everyone here faced, and to be consistent in this relationship are a key point to be quick answering in these cases. So I think this is a very good lesson that we can take here today, which is being consistent on these relationships and creating these relationships and these in the ecosystems and between not only among universities around the world, but universities and the government and the society where the universities are located. So thank you very much again for your answer. And moving on, last but definitely not least, I introduce you Professor Anja Steinbeck, who is the president of the University of Düsseldorf. Anja Steinbeck studied law at the universities of Mainz and Geneva. In 2001, she was called to the chair for civil law, commercial and company law, and industrial property rights at the University of Cologne. From 2011 to 2014, she was vice rector of planning, finance, and gender equality at the University of Cologne. Parallel to her academic career, from October 2004 to October 2014, Professor Steinbeck worked part-time as a judge in the 6th Civil Senate at Cologne Higher Regional Court. Since 2014, she has headed Heinrich Heine University Düsseldorf. And since 2020, she has also been a member of the Presidential Board of the German Rectors Conference and spokesperson for the member group of universities. So, Professor Anja, Professor Kelly has just spoken about cooperation with governments and society. But there is another actor that plays a very important role when we talk about cooperation, and that is industry. So what do you consider to be the main challenge and opportunities that universities face when collaborating with industry?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicholas, for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting panel. And actually, I would like to start with the opportunities, because I'm convinced that the opportunities predominate the challenges. First of all, I have to say that many research projects in Germany would not be possible if industry and business did not participate, because the core budget of universities are often insufficient. And in addition to the financial support, the know-how from praxis, of course, is very fruitful for our research. Third, transfer. The direct application potential of research results is very interesting for many scientific disciplines and for all the people in Germany or in the world. And fourthly, if we think about the cooperation in teaching or joint PhD projects, there could arise promising contacts for graduates and postdocs to future employers. But surely I have to say that there are also challenges. When universities and companies cooperate, different work cultures come together. For example, the cooperation partners sometimes speak different languages, and they have different ways how and when decisions are made. So this can influence the trust. In addition, the timeframes for research projects are not necessarily congruent because scientists often think in long terms, and business representatives and entrepreneurs, they often have like a short track and a short run. And moreover, you can have, in Germany, I only can speak for Germany, you can have legal and tax questions that are very difficult. And finally, they may be different interested in terms of research results and intellectual property that need to be clearly laid on the table before the project starts. So I hope I have 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. We're going to have some minutes more to an open debate in a few minutes, so we can go a little bit more on the topics you just mentioned, so which are very important. So going to the Q&A, first of all, thank you very much to all our panelists for the reflections, ideas, and proposals that you have generously shared with us today. Undoubtedly, they will be valuable inputs for the summit and for everyone that are attending this webinar. So we have received some questions from the audience. We will probably not have time to go on all the questions, so we're gonna pick some of them, and I will ask first for Arno, the first question that we have received. Arno, in your opinion, what is the value of employability within the roles of the university? In Argentina, the degrees are enabling for professional practice. I don't know if I was clear, Arno. I can repeat if you want. Is Arno here? So I don't know if Arno is with some problem. I can go to the second question, maybe, and then we can go back to the first one about employability. Or if anyone wants to pick this question about employability, it's open as well. Anya, Professor Mapstone, or Dr. Kali. Well, we'll come back later to Arno. So to all the panelists, to the one who wants to answer, in your opinion, which is the main value that universities can bring to the table when collaborating with other stakeholders? Please, Professor Anya.
Yeah, I just want to say it's cutting edge research and young motivated people. I think that's very much. Young and old people.
Okay.
I would agree with that, but I would also add a willingness to experience disruption. I think there is a real risk that when you collaborate, you always tend to look for people who collaborate with you because they are like you. So you find your match. And there is a real risk there that you simply reproduce the same, whereas some of the most interesting collaborative and partnership relationships that I have experienced have been those where somebody has brought something that is disruptive, that produces change or restyle or refresh, and makes you look at your institutional values slightly differently. So although I wouldn't recommend total disruption, I think having a disruptor present within a collaborative relationship is really important.
Thank you, Professor. I don't know if anyone wants to add something to Professor Mapstone's comments.
Well, I'd like to just say that I agree with everything that's been said so far, but I want to underscore something I think is compatible, and that is that higher education as a sector has a different bottom line, right? Than, we do not exist to make a profit, and therefore our missions, our commitment, through and through, to use the talent and the resources that we have at our disposal, whether that is the innovation that comes from our faculty, the ability, the desire, the willingness to be disrupted, the talent that comes from our students, to use that on behalf of solving challenges, solving societal problems is I think a very important element that puts us in a unique position to collaborate with others to move things forward.
And Dr. Kelly, if I can add a point on your comment, when you talk about entrepreneurship, how the universities can bring it. We talked about innovation, of course, it goes through entrepreneurship, but how the universities can connect and attract the students or the society in general to collaborate in this innovation, because we see nowadays a lot of hubs and other centers of innovation outside the universities, not only inside within the universities. How can you bring it to the universities, in your opinion?
Well, I think you have to have an institutional commitment to doing so, first of all. So many colleges and universities, certainly at Suffolk, and I imagine at many institutions represented on this webinar, we have centers for entrepreneurship, which are opportunities for both our faculty and their research, but also for young entrepreneurs, for students to be launching their ideas. And as you promote that kind of opportunity, it also, I've found, tends to attract centers of innovation who want to partner with up and coming talent, if you will. And so that's a real opportunity to engage innovative thinkers among our students, as well as the researchers that exist on our faculties, with private sector innovation centers. And I think that, again, to the theme of collaboration, that's a real opportunity.
Nicholas,
Good.
if I may.
So,
apologies.
No, please. I would connect. Transfer the word to you, Arno. So please. Sorry.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Apologies earlier on. I was having a few sound issues, but I just wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Kelly was saying there around the universities, and just a few specific terms there about being not about profit, solving societal problems. And I think we sometimes lose sight of those objectives of our institutions. I think far too often universities focus on continuous growth, taking on board more and more students, trying to be more and more comprehensive and all-encompassing when it comes to their research and education activities. So I think going forward, what I would really encourage any university to do is try to remain unique. You are you fulfill a role in a regional or in a national context, and you can play a role on an international level, but you're not always just being measured by, and this is maybe just in terms of, for example, rankings, we far too often focus on trying to be the same, all trying to be excellent at the same things. Whereas if we want to, for example, pick on the role of employability, we need to focus on what are we actually good at? What are we supposed to undertake? And this is not about making more money or getting more students on board or winning all the grant projects that are out there. It's about solving those societal problems. And I think in order to do that, we need to really focus on what each institution on its own is good at, so that we can collaborate and complement each other when we collaborate. That just in terms of that, and in terms of the employability and the role within the university, or what the university's role is as part of that, I think we need to listen not just to what the market needs, but we also need to look at where the future will take us. And innovation is a rapid process, and we can't be teaching the same content and transfer the same knowledge as we have done over the last 10, 20, or 30 years. We as organizations, we really need to form committees and boards and continuously have external stakeholders involve and adjust our curriculum and in the way we provide that curriculum just as well, to ensure the employability of students going forward. What are the skills of the next 10, 20 years, not what are the skills that we need today?
Maybe in the next 5 years, not 10 or 20. The market, it's changing very fast, and there is another point that I brought here. It's in this way: how can university collaboration with other stakeholders in education or research impact sustainable development? Because you mentioned about employability. Of course, sustainability is involved, or employability, it's part of the sustainable development. So how can the university collaborate with other stakeholders in this sense?
In terms of tackling sustainable, yeah.
In terms of the sustainable development, the impact sustainable development, I mean, because employability is one of them, and other sustainable issues as well. So we talked about the curriculum, the how to connect with innovation, but in the sustainable process.
I would say that there is, first of all, working in isolation, we're never going to solve or achieve any of those goals. We need to do that in collaboration, and if that is between other universities across the globe, working towards a more United Nations version of a university, or if that is working with any other type of stakeholder, any other type of research organization, I think that's the only way to go forward. We won't achieve anything by ourselves. And then what can universities do as part of that? I'd like universities to become less protective. I think there's far too many patent applications by universities on things that can provide a benefit to our society, but which are currently being protected and not utilized because we're looking for a commercial avenue. Again, coming down to what a university is actually there for, we're not there to make a profit, right? But we need to benefit from the research that we're doing. So when there is a clear commercial application and a large commercial entity wants to take over some of those patents and they, of course, should pay a university for it. But if there is something that can benefit society, and again, Dr. Kelly's comment about COVID, for example, and the role that universities have played in the development of vaccines, I think that is a perfect example of where we had less focus on just the patents and everyone wanting to make a profit, but it's more about the common good and the good of the common good of our planet and of our society going forward. So if you'd ask me if we want to tackle some of those sustainable development goals, one way is creating an entrepreneurial pathway out of the university, collaborative research, all of those kinds of things. But I think it all starts with being less protective and looking at what we're actually looking to achieve on the longer run, rather than on the short-term outcomes, such as financial return.
This is a huge challenge, right? Because the economic or the profit, it's something that many are looking for. So I think it's not easy to disconnect one from the other, but it's important to have this long-term vision in order to evaluate. For the other panelists, maybe someone wants to answer this one, and considering what Arno just mentioned, what are the challenges to international cooperation at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions? So we have these conditions of transnational collaboration, but at the same time we have some tensions in the world that bring a new environment. So what are these challenges in your opinion?
Well, I'll kick off on that if you like. I think universities have an essential role during a time of heightened international tension, because it's often the case that universities can keep cultural channels open when political figures or players are going to find it very difficult. So the role that universities have in terms of espousing and advocating the value of education as a great leveler is really important during these times. Now, there will be occasions when it's not possible because of reasons of international sanction or similar to keep those channels of communication open. But where they can be kept open, where one can share good practice, share ideas, keep conversations going, then I think it's absolutely essential that universities do that. And indeed, I think it's one of the major advocacy and ambassadorial roles that we have. So however difficult it may be to undertake, I see this as absolutely central to the core missions of our higher education sector.
Thank you, Professor. Does anyone else want to add something? Well, so unfortunately, we need to start closing this event, and I think we could stay hours talking about this subject, which is definitely very interesting. I think it could be great to listen to you 20 or 30 seconds of closing remarks regarding the subject, the collaboration of university with other stakeholders or with the society. So we can start with you, Professor Mapstone.
I think that if we don't collaborate and we don't collaborate constructively and share good practice, we miss out on the opportunities really to make our institutions even stronger, more flexible and more relevant than they are. But I would again reiterate my point that we shouldn't always try to find those who resemble us identically. We should look for the partners who do not look like ourselves, offer something different, and give us something very much to learn from.
Thank you very much. Professor Anya?
Yeah, I just can underline this, and I would like to say that every corporation, if it's with citizens, if it's with the government, if it's with the business, every corporation is fruitful for our research, because it's a question more that you get, and therefore it's very important for us to cooperate and not just to talk from scientist to scientist.
Thank you. Dr. Kali?
I think I would just like to close my comments in terms of a thank you, actually, to Santander universities. I think that the kind of forum we have here, and that the the gathering in a few months in Spain represents, is an opportunity to ensure that we are doing exactly as Professor Mapstone has just said, given opportunities to reach out to other institutions which are also very different from our own, and that is so critical to collaboration and to moving forward to focus on the challenges that we can help solve together. So I applaud this venue and others like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kalin. I think definitely it would be a very good opportunity to meet everyone and discuss more on this subject. And Mr. Arno, would you like to make some final comments?
Yes, and I would echo Dr. Kelly's kind words towards Santander, but also to all the attendees because without you, it's impossible for any of us to really drive change. So I think it's really important to not just to be here as a speaker, but also as an attendee, and really take the next step forward when it comes to collaboration. A key word a key phrase came to my mind from that the Australian government coined at some point, where first it was about publish or perish, and they moved towards collaborate or crumble. I don't think it's necessarily about crumbling, but the higher education sector is changing. And if you want to go with that change and be part of that change, it is time to start engaging and collaborating with other entities. Echoing Professor Mapstone's words, yes, which are not necessarily all like you. It's not about a homogeneous approach. It's about working with those that can make us better and that can make our society better and really drive that that impact on an economic as well as on a social level. I think universities are perfectly positioned to do that, as long as we're willing to make small adjustments in the way that we work and operate, and be inclusive to any other type of external stakeholder that can help us do that and drive innovation and ensure employability.
Thank you very much, Arno. And I think this kind of change is not different than what happened in the past. So universities are always adjusting and changing to answer the society demands. So it's part of the university life. So I think it's impossible to summarize the richness of ideas that have been shared here today in this webinar. So I'd like to emphasize one phrase that Arno mentioned. So if you want to fast, go alone, but go together. So highlighting how important collaboration is, even if this means going a bit slower. So go together. This is what Arno just said again. We need to collaborate. That will make the universities stronger and more relevant. It was interesting also to hear how the 5 roles of future universities that Arno mentioned as well. So the talent engine, correct me if I forget something, Arno, life partner, discovery, home base, and launch pad. So this can only be undertaken with other actors. So this is a proof of the real interconnection of universities. Collaboration which is motivated by access, talent, and exchange of ideas, facilitated by these relationships and hindered by bureaucracy. So I want to underline a last thing that Arno mentioned. We are not opposing entities, and we should strive towards mutual benefit. Professor Mapstone gave us some very important insights about global recruitment of students and research collaboration to tackle global challenges, and the importance of selecting which elements of internalization each university wants to prioritize. Dr. Kelly presented us on how challenging it is to have enough trust within a network to act quickly. If I'm not mistaken, Arno mentioned in the beginning of his presentation as well about the transparency in the relationship. So we need to be transparent, and we need to make the goals clear in order to collaborate better and help everyone. And Professor Anya underlined the opportunities of collaboration and the importance of intellectual property as well. So I think in the Q&A session, we could explore the importance of collaboration for solving social problems, even when this is often not mentioned in rankings, because sustainable development can only be tackled in collaboration. So the word here today is collaboration, and I think that is clear. Well, I think a lot of food for thought here today. Thanks again to all of the external speakers, Arno, our panelists, Professor Enya, Dr. Kelly, and Professor Mapstone, and to all of our audience. It's been a pleasure moderating this panel, and I hope to see you all again on April the 12th for our next and last webinar before the summit in Valencia. So I hope you all have a good day or a good afternoon or night for some of you. It was a pleasure again to be with you here today and hear from experts like our participants. So have a nice day or night.